InnoStars Talks is a series of insightful discussions with inspiring health innovators brought to you by EIT Health in collaboration with Emerging Europe, a management advisory and the premier source of English language business information about the region.
Today, I am joined by Dr. Marlena Sokoł-Szawlowska, who is a psychiatrist, and she works at the Psychiatry and Neurology Institute in Warsaw, Poland. She's a scientist and an author. She writes books exploring affective disorders, and she actively participated in the initial stages of MoodMon development. Marlena, welcome to the InnoStars Talks.
Hello, it's very nice to be with you.
So I need to congratulate to you on receiving 1 million euros in EIT health funding. Could you share a bit of what inspired MoodMon? We said that you worked on that, especially at the initial stage of the product development.
Okay, thank you on behalf of our entire clinical, IT and business team. EIT health funding for us a result of very hard work during the MoodMon trial based on artificial intelligence solution. It was first time in story of research on chronic affective disorder, recurrent depression and bipolar disorder, to obtain clinical data from large clinical group, 100 patients at the beginning and 88 at the end. Previous technological studies were not so complicated and covered tiny population and short observation times. And in conclusion, from our MoodMon studies, are very groundbreaking because psychiatry is still based on 19th century diagnostic methods. As you can know, unfortunately, all psychiatrists based diagnosis on interview, observation, and sometimes, if it's possible, with interviews with close family of the patients. Of course, we have classifications, we have standards and procedures. We can also take some lab test or psychological test, neuroimaging, but they are never the most important in clinical assessment in mental disorders. That's why clinical progress with big data for us is huge opportunity to discover biomarkers in psychiatry. Do you know biomarker definition?
Well, there's quite a few of them, right? In terms of different diseases, different disorders. But
yes,
the definition probably, I'm not a medical, specialist, so probably less so.
Okay, so the main definition talks us that biomarker we understand as objective indicator of some medical condition of disease, and biomarker have to be measured. Yes. And as you can see in psychiatry, we still have subjective assessment based on classification standards, but a bit subjective. That's why MoodMon study was so important for us to make information, clinical information from mobile devices from patients and make some clinical connection assessment by psychiatrists and have some very important conclusion for us to find biomarker in psychiatry in the field of affective disorder.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned clinical trials, and we're going to talk about that. But I need to say one thing. So you're talking about the 19th century method of sort of treatment here, and now comes
not treatment, diagnosis.
Oh, sorry, diagnosis.
Treatment
correct, different. Yes, diagnosis, and then comes artificial intelligence. So how do you foresee this AI-powered tool, revolutionizing the mental health landscape going forward, especially in the area of psychiatry.
Psychiatry and affective disorder. Depression is bane of modern societies. Extremely serious mental disorder, more and more, not caused by biological but external factors. Industrialization, chronically online, overstimulated by information, social media, and society atomization. I mean loneliness from childhood to old age. Bipolar disorder is more biological, based on genes similar like in psychosis in the area of mental disorder. But mental disorder as depression and bipolar are very difficult to diagnose for systemic and social reasons and cost a lot in individual and state budgets. AI in psychiatry is the new chance to find real biomarkers and help psychiatrists in diagnosis and catch the subtle symptoms of relapse at a very early stage. That's the main role of AI.
At some point, you were talking about collecting different biomarkers, collecting different data. Can you tell me a little bit more about what kind of data you are collecting right now and how it kind of helps you, predict and diagnose these disorders?
Okay, first of all, I want to emphasize that all studies confirm that people with mental disorder use mobile technology as often as people without mental disorder. That's very important for us because on patients' mobile devices, we can find a lot of important clinical data, especially for psychiatry. And you can imagine some patients with deep depression, with, for example, psychomotor slowdown, low self-esteem, social isolation, and sleep problems. And you can see all such symptoms are in mobile devices. Number of steps, less activity in social media, and even problems with sleep. Based on mobile devices, it's also possible to see the chronic patient in remission. Remission, we understand as time without non-symptoms, good functioning, like a healthy person. Machine learning, as you asked me, can combine such data with psychiatrist clinical judgment and could potentially send alerts when mental status is changed.
And also, this is the data that we can collect from wearables and from our mobile phones. But also, as far as I know, voice parameters are highlighted as one of the most predictive factors for mental state changes. Why did you choose this marker, and how does it enhance the overall accuracy of MoodMon's predictions?
Okay, voice changes as clinical feature in affective disorders were described almost 100 years ago. In practice, we know such symptoms. For example, sometimes even during small, short phone call with patients, I can pre-diagnose depression, mania, or remission state in my patient's voice. However, only now, when we have artificial intelligence revolution, we can assess specific physical voices parameters as biomarkers in affective disorder. And in our MoodMon study, voice parameters were most correlated with mental state, most strongly compared to physical activity or, for example, sleep. That's why we decided to show your voice parameters as biomarker.
I see. And let's go back briefly to the clinical trials, because you've already mentioned these. And when we look at the results of all these clinical trials, I have to say they were extremely impressive. I mean, if you look at the sensitivity rate of almost 90% and the specificity rate of almost 100%, 99, almost 99%. What key challenges did you actually face, while training AI to achieve such results? Because they're crazy.
Yes, it is. We have a lot of key challenges during our study. For example, at the stage of planning, we needed patients' voices samples in naturalistic conditions. It was known from previous studies that the patient cannot read text, but respond to emotionally neutral questions. And we have huge problem because patients with mental disorder are sometimes completely different in simple. When I ask you, do you like Christmas? Yes, why not?
Mm-hmm.
For some patients, Christmas is the worst time of year.
Yes.
And childhood trauma or loneliness. That's why it's very difficult to find neutral questions. And I know in the future, even GPT chat is not good idea to help us. We need some psychiatrists, psychologists to decide which know patient's life and things, beliefs. And the second, we had also really small technical issues, which were fixed during updates of the MoodMon application at the beginning. And I think we got such high results for two most important reasons. First, large amount of data, number of records, and AI based on clinical assessment by psychiatrists and mood system sent alerts based on individual and whole population of the patient's data. That's why I think we have such high results in MoodMon study.
So if we look at the number of people globally that are affected by affective disorders, we're talking about 280-ish million people. How does MoodMon address the challenge of limited healthcare resources? You can talk to practically any medical professional, and they will tell you that the resources are very scarce, and there's too few doctors who can treat different diseases.
Before COVID pandemic, I wrote an article, and it was completely future-oriented about e-psychotherapy and e-psychiatry. E-psychotherapy and e-psychiatry. Small practice experience before pandemic came from Canada and Australia.
Okay.
But pandemic changed everything in a few weeks. It was really hard experience for patients, psychologists, and psychiatrists. My next article, I described the total acceleration of e-psychiatry. And now we know that many remote solutions will be with us because they are very useful for patients and very useful for medical systems. And we know that MoodMon application as a mobile app can be part of e-psychiatry revolution.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of feedback have you received from patients, but also from caregivers regarding their experience with MoodMon?
For most patients, the main subjective, I should tell it, subjective benefit is better control of subjective mental state. So better self-observation. And the MoodMon study shows that's very interesting, no statistical differences between feedback from users with depression and from users with bipolar disorder. Very similar, no statistical differences. And disadvantages, if you ask me, a small group of patients didn't like sending voice samples every day.
Okay.
Something like that.
But do they have to? I mean, do these samples have to be long, or how?
No, we have three questions, emotionally neutral, as you know. 3 questions and 3 answers. It took not more than 3 minutes. Sometimes 1 minute is enough.
Okay.
For the system, enough is even as IT specialists told us, more than half a minute, something like that. It's enough to catch the physical parameters.
I see. And you mentioned these neutral questions. Can you share one of those questions? Because it sounds really interesting. How to make sure that you're not touching any elements
area
that
of
are really
of your soul. For example, do you like blue color? Yes or no, and why?
Okay. That's an interesting one, and I don't think it's that easy to answer. I mean, I would have to think, how to answer this question.
We needed some arguments to make the answer longer,
Oh, I see. Okay, so let's again look at MoodMon because it not only helps, but it also prevents certain consequences. And one of those consequences is really difficult to talk about, is suicide or hospitalization. The latter perhaps less so. So let's take a look at the role of this early detection and intervention in improving patients' outcomes, particularly with respect to reducing the frequency of hospitalization or suicidal attempts.
I'm the president of EAD. EAD, it's European Alliance Against Depression. And I am the president in Poland, of course. And that's non-profit organization based on scientific data. And all conclusions are clear. Early diagnosis is the crucial to avoid terrible, fatal consequences like suicide. I write much more about that, about early prevention on affective disorders in my books. But according to MoodMon system conclusions, we know that it's very useful as a tool for early symptoms detection. For example, during the study, I called to my patient and asked him, something is wrong in your application. Probably you have some problems. And it was so surprised for the patient. We catched so subtle moment in their lives. And for example, it was even better than family's observation. For example, patient didn't recognize that moment. Applications find it.
And can you elaborate on that a bit? I mean, can you give us an example of what this subtle situation was and how it kind of helped you diagnose?
Okay, for example, For example, in bipolar disorder, sometimes episode starts because patient has sleep deprivation. For example, you go for some trip to airports and very early, and you have deprivation of sleep. And sometimes in bipolar, it's enough only one night of deprivation and the episode starts. Maniac or depressive episode. And that's very important. And MoodMon application catch that night, deprivation of sleep. And it was that moment. Sometimes it was beginning of episode. It's very early stage.
Mm-hmm. This is really important in that prevention situation, because you can detect things happening before the patient would actually come to your office and check that. Let's take a look a little bit broader at the sort of IT tools supporting market. It is growing quite fast by practically about 16% per annum. And this is the area where MoodMon positioned itself. What are the next steps for MoodMon in terms of clinical validation, certification, and making it available to a broader group of patients?
Okay, we have plans for MoodMon very ambitious. We would like support at least 150,000 patients across Europe by 2028. But to achieve such goal, we need proof. MoodMon application is usability, positive impact on patients' quality of life, and the last, economic value for health providers. Safety and effectiveness were already proved in MoodMon 1 project. Yes. And one we need to prove another one. And after certification, we will enter the market in Europe, but we think in the future about rest of continents, of course.
MoodMon is supported by an international consortium formulated as a part of EIT Health Flagship Call, which is obviously a strategic initiative of EIT Health that invites all parties of the so-called knowledge triangle. I'm talking about science, academia, and business, to obviously collaborate on solving specific challenges related to priority health areas. Which institution is Britenet Med working with in developing and scaling the project, and what is their role specifically?
Mm-hmm. First, we cooperate with important medical centers in Spain and Sweden, the university hospitals in Madrid, Barcelona, and Cordoba. In Stockholm, Center for Psychiatric Research will test MoodMon system usability and economic value. The Department of Clinical Science, Interventions and Technology at Karolinska Institute is responsible for legal framework of all based medical devices. We have also commercial partner, an insurance company in Spain, DKV Salud. Salud is interested in the Mood solution to company portfolio. And we cooperate with Medigen Foundation as support in certification process. Certification as medical device 2A.
I understand. And if we look at Britenet, as it is also a part of EIT Health's Flagship Call, that has gained access, and thanks to that has gained access to a valuable network of innovators. How do you plan to leverage these connections and collaborations for the future?
Mm-hmm. Our plans are ambitions. We are looking for new partners, and we are going to some EIT Europe events. And as you know, the EIT in Europe is a very hot topic in the area of mental health. That's why we are helpful, and probably we are almost sure in the future we will cooperate with new partners, and we will have new cross-border possibilities to work together with new teams on similar area.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. But before we go, let me just say one thing to our audience. If you are struggling with depression, anxiety, or any other emotional difficulties, you are not alone. It's important to seek help, reach out to a professional and medical staff, talk to someone you trust, or call a mental health support helpline. Dr. Marlena Sokoł-Szawlowska was my guest today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It was really nice to be with you and talk about such important new thing, new stage for psychiatrists. artificial intelligence-based solutions for psychiatry and for especially affective disorder.